Can there be forgiveness for a traitor? Betrayal is one of storytelling's most powerful weapons. Few moments hit harder than watching someone you trusted shatter that trust completely. In GTA San Andreas, Big Smoke is motivated by hunger. In many ways. Hunger for power, status, and recognition. Willing to build his own criminal empire at any cost. Even if it meant turning his back on the people who once stood beside him. Manipulated by Officer Tenpenny or not, Big Smoke never regrets his choices. Even at his dying breath, he stands proud of what he has accomplished. And that's the greedy type of traitor. But sometimes betrayal comes from something far more ideological. Conviction. In Modern Warfare 2, General Shepard murders Ghost and Roach in cold blood. To him, the world had grown weak. America needed a hero, someone willing to do the unforgivable to restore its strength. And Shepard was more than willing to become that hero, even if it meant igniting a global war. Video games are filled with traitors driven by reasons like this and so much more. But what if betrayal came from somewhere else entirely? What if the traitor wasn't driven by selfishness, or patriotism, or even madness? What if the person who betrayed you was someone you never fully trusted, but you liked either way, whose goals were honorable and self-aware? Someone whose reasons you might even understand. What if that traitor was Armbrust? You know, those characters that feel like they are always holding back? The ones who seem too relaxed, too confident, like they're always one step ahead of everyone else in the room. The kind of character who feels harmless at first until you realize everyone keeps warning you about them. Someone you should never let your guard down around. In Trails of Cold Steel, that character is Armbrust. A charming upperclassman with a carefree attitude, a sharp tongue that will make you laugh, and a reputation for being far more dangerous than he lets on, but who will steal your heart anyway. His story comes from The Legend of Heroes, a massive JRPG series known for its long-form storytelling. But to understand why Crow works so well as a traitor, we don't need the entire history of the series in all of its entirety. We just need to start at one place, Thors Military Academy, a school that separates their students on nobles and commoners, but where Reen, our dear protagonist, finds himself in a special class, Class 7. A social experiment made responsible to test new forms of combat and technology, as well as a way to challenge the old ways in search for a better future, a theme that is well explored in the whole series. But you see, Trails of Cold Steel 1 is what we would call as a comfy game. For most of its runtime, Cold Steel is a surprisingly light, almost comforting story. A coming-of-age journey built on friendship, routines, and slow character growth, bonding with characters from their casual to their most extreme cases. It's mainly a game where you spend its time in Thors, understanding the lore, slowly being introduced to major characters that will play bigger roles in the next games, as well as the many mysteries that the franchise holds in its store. And trust me, there's a lot of lore. One of great importance is hidden beneath all that, the old schoolhouse, an abandoned building that changes inside monthly through magic. A place that constantly gives new trials with tougher obstacles, each floor granting a new kind of challenge. Always whispering to Reen, calling for him, reaching out for him. However, early on, as you are first sent to the old schoolhouse, on your very first day, we catch a glimpse of our boy, Crow, along his senior friends Toa, George, and Angelica. But his real introduction to Reen isn't a grand moment. He just kinda shows up. Just like any other student, but from the very first interaction, something feels off. Reen asks for his name, and Crow answers asking for a coin, 50 mira. He flips it into the air and asks a simple question. Which hand caught it? It's a trick, like he warned. You can tell that much, even if it feels off. But no matter what you pick, you are wrong. And before Rin can even question what just happened, Crow just smiles and walks away with the coin. But the next time they meet, after some minor exchanges, he doesn't explain the trick. He just asks if Rin had figured it out already. After all, wouldn't you rather feel like you earned the mirror back? And when Rin finally does figure it out due to the bag being placed between his legs, the guy isn't even carrying the money to pay Rin back. He's just built like that. Because the game was never about the coin. He doesn't even introduce himself properly. We get Angelica to burst in the conversation to do so. Only after her passing through that Crow finally says his name. And Rin is left with but a single thought that every senior seems to be somewhat important. We just don't know what is Crow's deal yet. But an important thing to point out is that there is no rush to exploring Crow as a character. This is a JRPG after all. You will spend close to 100 hours to finish it. And Crow starts off as a mere sideliner that slowly grows. Throughout the academy year, Crow becomes a constant presence in Rin's life. Sometimes he teaches him practical things, like sharpening his awareness on the battlefield, or the small survival instinct soldiers rely on. Other times it's lighter. Crow introduces Rin to Blade, the card game that becomes a staple of their travels and the main minigame of the first 2 installments. And other times he proudly shows off his beloved motorcycle that Angelica rides, a machine he treats like it's straight up his girl. Even some of Class 7's most important tools are tied to him. The Arca's combat links themselves were developed with the help from Crow and the other senior students. And when things go south, Crow is often the one standing beside Rin. When Elise, Rin's sister, is trapped in the old schoolhouse, Crow is the one who jumps in to help rescue her, a fight that Rin simply couldn't win alone. Over time, Crow begins to feel less like an upperclassman and more like a mentor, a brotherly one at that. Always hanging around, teasing Rin about wasting his looks, or poking fun at his naivety, but always pushing him to see the world a little more clearly. Crow is easily the most organic tutorial and friendship the game has to offer, as well as a way to train you to pay attention to everything that is happening. And the reality is that Crow isn't a member of Class 7, that is, until halfway through the game. You see, our boy, despite being a senior, he has failed so hard as a student that he had to come to instructor Sarah asking for a chance to graduate. And his addition is probably the best thing for the whole game onward. What was sprinkled from time to time becomes a constant, and thank God for that. Because we got some of the best scenes after that. And his addition comes at the best time. Since this is indeed a school life story, we are set to an Academy Festival event that happens every year, and thus every class must participate. Some classes offers a play, other events and activities, but Class 7, while doing their own special field exercises, were late to that. So what happens is that they have this cute struggle in defining what they should do, and Crow doesn't give them the answer, because in his own words, he doesn't want to strip them from such an experience. Yeah, just Crow being Crow after all. But alongside his fellow seniors, an idea comes out to make a full-on concert, much like him had done in the past. And why am I explaining all this? Well, you see, Crow didn't lead them. Even if it did acted like him, not really doing much, he made them believe they could stand on their own. Crow didn't step up to solve it, but he's the one to give the perfect push to move everyone forward. The idea came from Toa, the music with Elliot, and all the energy that only his classmates could bring. He wasn't the leader of it, but he was the one to make this activity not only feel possible, but alive. And when it hits, it's goofy, it's messy, it's not perfect, but it's so incredibly theirs. This was all that the academic life was building toward. Not a great threat or a final boss, but them, together. And for this mere moment, everything feels so complete, so perfect. But the reality is that nothing is perfect. Or have you forgotten about the old schoolhouse? You see, during the many explorations through the old schoolhouse, it evolved to such a threat that at the night of the event, Class 7 had to step forward and interfere. All the mystery leading down like a spiral led them to this moment. On the night of the festival, the moment where everything should be at its brightest, that's when it finally reveals something, where all the mysteries leading down comes to an end. One last trial, one final boss, and together they overcome it. And then something appears. Not just a relic, not just a machine, something. A towering knight, silent, watching. Valimar. No one understands what they're looking at. Not Rin, not Class 7, not even the instructors. Just one person. Someone who masks their unimpressiveness with confusion. Someone who later, as they examine it, even jokes about it. Who would strap themselves into that thing? And you know, that lands just like any other of his lines. Nothing serious. After all, this is a precious moment. This is Class 7's precious moment. An uncertain graduation moving forward. Who knows what will be the tomorrow of Thors and Class 7? And on the most anime style possible, Rin thanks them. Elliot for the music, Crow for everything else. But what really matters is when it's just the two of them. Because this isn't just a farewell, this is the first time Rin opens up to someone. Crow is his usual way, doesn't make it heavy, he jokes, he teases, makes it very clearly that if anyone dares call him Mr. Armbrust, they're getting smacked. But beneath all that, there's something real, because this is it, he's graduating. Different from the others, he's older, and without him, Class 7 won't be the same. Still, he doesn't close the door. I'll drop by once in a while. Not a promise, but not a goodbye either. And then, almost casually, Crow tosses something to Rin. A coin. Nah, 50 mira. And suddenly, that small moment, that stupid trick, isn't so small anymore. Because Crow lets something slip here. He says he doesn't return the same borrowed mira, which means he never exchanged that coin. This whole time he was holding on to Rin's 50 mira. Not as a debt, but as something else entirely. Rin tries to brush it off at first, after everything Crow has done. 50 mira means nothing, but then he pushes back. He says that coin has been gathering some interest, half a year's worth. So he questions how much does Crow think he owes him now. And just like that, like a snap, this comes to a complete full circle. Crow asks him where he learned that from, and Rin doesn't hesitate. From you. Because that's what this was all about, not the coin, but what was exchanged through it. So they don't settle it, they don't close the tab, they make a new deal. One that Crow might pay back someday. And just like that, their story refuses to end. But up to this point, when the mystery payoff of the old schoolhouse is given, Crow is there. Crow is responsible for the whole arrangement of the school festival payoff of Class 7. All that sweet ending is because Crow was there. And the full circle of the 50 mira for Rin to grow and learn through the game, this personal payoff with you as the player, is because Crow started it. And they bring this up because where one arc ends, another one is born. Sadly, the festival was brought to an abrupt end by Principal Van Dyke, as he states the vanishment of Erebonia's largest military base, Guerrilla Fortress. Something resulted from crossbow attacks, and thus Chancellor Osborne is set to make a speech to Erebonia early in the morning. And tension suddenly skyrockets. Class 7 decides to listen to the speech together, But one member is missing. Supposedly gone to hear it in person. And what a speech it was. After all, it was the speech of the Blood and Iron Chancellor, aka the most divisive military politician on Erebonia, a man responsible for the annexation of neighbor countries and independent regions. But nevertheless, he was loved by many, despite his ways of ruling. And just as this beloved controversial figure is about to declare his official statements, a gunshot. A sniper shoots him straight in the heart. The horrific scene left Chancellor on the ground, bleeding to death. The sniper who took the shot is cornered by Major Claire from the RMP, revealing to us that the man who killed Erebonia's Chancellor is Crow. Pause. You see, there's a key thing I purposefully omitted. One key thing that was unfolding in the background of this quote-unquote cozy story. Since early on the sidelines, all the way back on the first day of school, a threat emerged. A terrorist group known as the Imperial Liberation Front begins operating in the shadows. A small group at that, each member driven by their own hatred toward one man, Chancellor Gilead Osborne. Their rage and desire to kill that man is what brought them together. But sitting above them, above Scarlet, Vulcan, and Gideon, lies one man. Leading them we have the Masked Man, only known as C. Their actions cause terror among Erebonia, to a point where they pose a threat for Garelio Fortress, as I just mentioned. The biggest and most well-equipped base designed to protect the nation. Their actions also led them to holding hostage of Princess Alfin and Lady Elise, the daughter of the man who rules Erebonia and Reen's younger sister. Two significant pieces in the nobility. And on top of all that, their presence is so strong, even the RMP, one of the strongest divisions in all the country, weren't able to handle or even predict their next step. And that is shown here, because of how easily they take control of the situation. Everyone, Class 7 included, was always 2 steps back from the Imperial Liberation Front, always falling for their tricks over and over. From minor inconveniences on Heimdall to faking their own deaths at dire situations. And because of those mistakes, one of the most important men was killed in front of the whole nation. A straight declaration of war. And all that was done by the hands of a mere second-year student, the playful, kind, and trickster senior. And I mean, Reen in Class 7 didn't have time to process anything, not the act, not the realization that one of their best friends just committed the biggest crime possible, and not even that their whole lives just suddenly turned 180 because Trista was invaded soon after. War rages on out of nowhere, and the classmates jump in to save the place they learned to call home. They fought valiantly, but it simply wasn't enough. Just Scarlet, piloting one of the Panzer Soldats, was able to outpower them easily, forcing Reen to heed his call for the first time, summoning Valimar, the Ashen Knight. That sleeping divine knight found in the guts of the old schoolhouse comes out, awakened, a full-on mech out of nowhere that is able to turn tides of war. And Reen syncs up with Valimar. Seamlessly, he pilots the Ashen Knight with precision, and so he does it. He defeats Scarlet without issue. A victory well deserved, one that his fellow classmates cannot help but feel euphoric for. That is, until a carefree voice hits them from above. An Azure Divine Knight descends, none other than their friend, Crow. But this last confrontation doesn't start with a bang, rather with a warm statement from Crow. That despite them seeing each other the day before, it feels like it was another lifetime due to how much had happened in just one morning. And that bittersweet memory is the one that makes Reen question everything. Why he was doing that, if he truly killed the Chancellor, and how the hell does he get a Divine Knight? And Crow's painful response is just as you might have expected. Uncomfortably casual. He was just staying at Thors to kill off time until he got a chance to get to the Chancellor. And thus the final knife enter our hearts when he says he had fun with us, but he's C. And Crow was never real. But Rin doesn't believe it. He calls out his hypocrisy. They sang together, they spent field days together, all the memories, everything must mean something. And for a split second, Crow breaks, only to tell Rin that it was all a lie. That there's no other way but to fight. Crow states that Rin is just an obstacle that needs to be taken down. Easy as that. But if Rin wins, Crow would pay his 50 mira interest back. And as playful as he ever was, even at a moment like this, he says that if Rin wins, he'll do all that boring power friendship speech and Rin can have fun for once in his life. Crow, even after showing who he was all along, he is still Crow. The facade he states to exist in him being C and that Crow never existed is just bullshit. And you, the player, sees it at first hand. But I might be getting ahead of myself. Because the fight happens and Crow wins. Nah, he humiliates Rin at the first instance of his true power. After all, there's a huge gap in experience. But before the fight can finish, Class 7 interferes and Celine, the talking cat, don't question, calls for Valimar to flee with Rin and leave all his friends of Class 7 to deal with Crow alone, only leaving behind the promise that one day they will group up once again. And I shit you not, this is the end of the first game. It ends just like that. Everything turned to the worse. Rin is gone, the villains won, and the odds are stacked against us. Not only the terrorists, but some political figures and new faces united. Some far more dangerous than even the strongest warriors in the whole franchise. So here's where Cold Steel shifts. The transition from a casual school game to Rin and Erebonia fighting a war against the impossible. A Herculean task of restoring order, saving the true noble leaders, and even rescuing a friend whom they made a promise with. So, you know, stakes are high, battles come and go, day in and day out. And just as progression is being done in the first half of the second game, the counterattack by the antagonists are even stronger than the heroes could fathom. Countless struggles leads us to the ending of Act 1 in Cold Steel 2, where we get a battle between our heroes and villains. But this encounter reaches its peak as we clearly see who arrives last. Calm and charming as always, Crow compliments Rin's skill with Valimar, skills he had been sharpening since their first encounter, but still the gap is far too large. Experience overcomes anything, and just like that, Crow humiliates Rin once again, without even using his real power this time. And he doesn't spare the details in explaining the difference in age and skill, because if Rin wants to win, he needs to go through a lot more. Which means, yeah, another defeat. Rin is forced to surrender and come with them. Their leader, Duke Cayenne, tries to persuade Rin to join their forces. A moment that could shatter this whole tale in quality. You see, any other story when it reaches this point would resort to the classic "join me to rule them all," an invitation through power. But that's not what our boy Crow does. Because as I said before, he is different from other traitors. And that's the reason why I am making this video. Because with Rin's mind completely broken, distraught in what he should choose between his principles and what is the right thing to do to protect those he loves, Crow simply knocks on his door to talk with him. Not to lecture him, not to force him to do anything. He simply wants to spare a moment with his friend. And let me say that it's not a casual conversation whatsoever. There's friction from Reen's side. How could he not be mad over Crow after all? But there's something else. Reen still didn't get his answer from back then. He still doesn't know why Crow is doing what he's doing. So he simply asks once more, why? And his answer is way better than expected. Crow never pretends like his story is anything grand. In fact, when he tells it to Reen, he almost downplays it, saying that comparing their pasts would be ridiculous. Because unlike Reen, Crow isn't some chosen figure uncertain of their past. He is not noble. He's just a guy from a small coastal town called Jurai. For most of its history, Jurai was quiet, a simple place built on fishing, tourism, and mining. It wasn't rich, but it was stable. And guiding the town through all of it was Crow's grandfather, the mayor, and the only family Crow had left. But then the Empire arrived. You see, when the imperial government proposed expanding the railway network through Jurai, the offer looked like a blessing. Investment flooded the town. Business boomed. Prosperity came faster than anyone expected, but prosperity came with strings attached. When the railway connecting Jurai was suddenly destroyed, the imperial government threatened to pull all of its support unless the city accepted direct imperial rule. And the man sent to enforce that decision was Gilead Osborne. Crow's grandfather tried to resist the annexation, but the people of Jurai had already tasted wealth, and they weren't willing to lose it. So they chose the Empire. And to justify that choice, they needed someone to blame. So they blamed Crow's grandfather, even though many of them already knew the truth. So, stripped of his position and betrayed by the very people he protected, the old mayor resigned, and just a few months later, he died. And for Crow, that was the moment everything changed. Not because he believed he could fix the empire, not because he thought he was fighting for justice, but because he wanted revenge. Crow didn't form the Imperial Liberation Front to save the country, he did it to kill one man. And yet, even here, Crow refuses to make the choice for Reen. He never asks Reen to join him out of loyalty or even sympathy. Instead, he tells him something much simpler. If Reen decides to fight him or stand beside him, that choice has to come from Reen himself. And also from his own resolve. And also that he just needs to keep it in his mind that if he wants to go against Crow, it isn't just him he is going against, but also Ouroboros, Zephyr, and the Imperial Liberation Front. And if he wants to gamble his chances, Crow will be waiting. And Reen, he decides to talk with Scarlet and Vulcan. He understands why they are with Crow and the position they chose much like him. Because at the end of the day, Reen doesn't sugarcoat the hatred toward Osborne. He was not a good man. But Reen has his own convictions. He has his own choice and voice to make. And here is where we see it shine. He chooses his own path, even if it means to go against the impossible. And that he does. He fights his way out with Princess Alphen against the best that Duke Cayenne has to offer, embracing that which he held as a barrier, up until he comes face to face with Crow himself once more. And as always, we peek at Crow being himself, poking fun at how funnily inconsistent Reen is, being depressed for a minute, and on the next, he is all heroic, princess carrying one of the cutest girls in Erebonia. And Reen claims that to not only be true, but that his conviction has roots. He finally found them, not only in Alphen, but Class 7, his sister, and even Crow himself. So once more, they have no choice but to cross swords. And this third fight between them is different. It's the first time they are squaring off one-to-one, face-to-face without the knights. And Rin, with his spiritual unification active, is just enough to take on Crow. And just enough is the right words for it. He wins the fight, but unfortunately, he meets his limit right there. After fighting so many of the very best one after another, he stood no chance in the lion's den. But something unfolds. We get a lengthy cutscene on what is essentially the chessboard being set to what's soon to come and how it will play out. A disaster waiting to unfold. So a deal is made. A temporary truce. So that they don't end up all dying here. But what we're here for is the promise laid once again between Rin and Crow. And that there is still a long way for Rin to grow. But one thing is for certain. If Rin wants to win, he needs to get a real sword for Valimar, as well as more training with the knight. And this is surprisingly wholesome. The energy is so simple and so like them. You can even see clearly how Crow doesn't dismiss the possibility of him being brought back. Hell, he encourages Rin to try it, to reach him. And this wouldn't be possible if we didn't get scenes down the line after this, where we see Crow actually caring for Rin and Scarlet during their second fight with the mechas. And it's more than obvious with all my talk that Crow is special. Because despite all what's happened, his attitude doesn't change. He's not suddenly evil or imposing his views. He's just another young man with his own principles and desires. He lets it slip more than once how much he cares for Class 7 and especially Rin, even after his betrayal. I mean, it is so hard to find in fiction characters being portrayed like they always were, even after world-bending events, such as Cold Steel 1. And all this makes it even more believable on what happens at the end of this game. Because the next stop is the Infernal Castle, the climax. After Rin is forced to go against forces beyond his strength, compelled to sharpen his skills with Valimar, building a real foundation for his goals and overcoming even his own doubt in his abilities, for only then he could have his match one-to-one with whom he really wanted to best. To honor his promise made not only to his classmates, superiors and his family, but also to himself. Only now he could face Crow. And their final encounter is rather nostalgic. Even as Rin reminisces of his own word in bringing Crow back, Crow still denies such a thing from happening. But here's where things change. Vita challenges Crow's point of view, stating that there are only two paths for those with impossible desires. Those who give up, and those who overcome anything for them. For that is what it means to dream. Class 7 are all made out of people whose innocence and perseverance for their own goals brought them here. And when Crow is questioned what is it that he dreams of, all he can say is, "You guys would hunt me to the ends of the earth, wouldn't you?" He himself cannot bring up his own dreams for them, which leads to the only way this story could conclude. Crow throws his defining moment at them. He could jump in the Azure Knight, but he wants to fight against his friends face to face, not as C, but as Crow, and the last member of the Imperial Liberation Front. A battle that escalates to the point where everything from the first game builds up to. A battle between Awakeners. Only Rin against Crow without holding back. But right before that, a tender moment is shown when Crow senses something in Rin, that he's scared. Scared of the end. Because this is a place of no return between them. Everything led to this inevitable battle, this decisive collision. only for Crow to hit him with what he was hiding in his heart. Much like Rin in the first game during the 50 mirror scene, Rin's future depends only on himself. If he wants to bring him back and force him to graduate with the rest of them, he needs to win. There is no other way, and this is his last chance. So when they fight, this battle isn't about the Infernal Castle. It isn't about Class 7 or his sister, or even bringing Crow back. This fight is about Rin finally winning against Crow. After so many months together, they finally get their finale. They got what they both wanted, for Rin to come out as a winner, for him to prove to Crow and himself how much he had grown. But let's not alleviate things, okay? Rin cheats, yeah. Something even Crow himself mentions, as he uses the links with the rest of Class 7. But that is the point. Even Rin admits that he cannot separate himself from those he loves, and that includes Crow in a way, which brings a genuine laugh to this man's face, as he remorsefully asks forgiveness to Vita for failing in their battle. You see, all is settled, all is solved, but the final battle was far from over. Duke Cayenne, our big bad, does the classic evil guy thing, where he does what he was told not to do, and he ignites the core to the Infernal Castle, the third Awakener in this moment, the Vermilion Knight. Leaving Class 7 with no other option but a three-way battle, Rin and Valimar united with Crow and Ordine for the final fight, a culmination of everyone's hearts and souls up to this exact moment, where only one thing lies ahead. The end. The one thing Rin was afraid of. Because this is the moment of no return. A return Rin will not live to see. Because of a necessary sacrifice. Crow leaves enough room for Rin to end it all. Not to look back and finish it. Carrying his blade for everyone's sakes, Rin defeats the knight, putting an end to what would become Apocalypse itself. And that's when irony hits. Thors and our heroes succeed. They stopped Cayenne, the Apocalypse, and put an end to the war. But in the celebration for their victory, one man falls with a fatal wound to his chest, and still keeps on smiling. Tragedy and irony writes themselves. For that is the same place he shot Osborne, and Crow himself says it. Karma is a bitch. I mean, there is no way I can make justice to his words and give you the reason why this hits so hard, because it is behind 200 hours of gameplay. His final words are a recall to everything they had been through. All the jokes, the cherished moments, and the love he gave them. Hell, this whole video undermines how much I love this story. But what matters is that his goodbye is bittersweet. For that is how Crow dies. Trails of Cold Steel is a big saga, and their story goes on, trust me. It's so complicated and huge that I could never do it justice in half an hour. Maybe one day I do it in a long format video so people can call it slop, because it would end up being like 6 hours per entry. However, this story, this specific part of the story between characters since its beginning, hooked me. So much so that I am playing Cold Steel 4 for the first time right now. Not even I know how this arc, this whole saga ends. But what Falcom managed to accomplish with Crow and Rin was truly special. You know, when Rin was stranded far off to the edge of Erebonia in the beginning of Cold Steel 2, the man who had found him first was Crow. He was the one to give Toval, one of the mentors for Rin, the instructions to find him. Across the many encounters, Crow states to Rin that he needs to sharpen his skills if he wants to best him in combat. Go after a girl from his class to enjoy his youth and even to strengthen his resolve and find his own path as a man. Crow works so much for me because Rin is there to serve as a motivation for the entirety of both games. It's not just a matter of revenge, it's a coming-of-age story, one where both characters mature at their own pace. Both characters carry heavy burdens quietly, masquerading their pain of responsibility outside their control. They are both deeply loyal, not only to those they love, but also to each other. And the most ironic part is that both are willing to risk their own lives for their goals. Instinctively, they understand one another because they come from the same emotional material. That's why their bond feels so natural. Still, they are also natural opposites. Where Rin internalizes his own guilt, Crow explodes it. Where Rin protects all that was built, Crow tries his best to fix it. They are two young men shaped by injustice. One chose to endure it, the other chose to answer it. Crow Armbrust spent most of his life chasing revenge as C, but in the end, he didn't die as C. He died as Crow, a friend, a rival, and a member of Class 7. And that is why I think that Crow Armbrust is the best traitor of all time. Thanks for watching.